Okay. Um, just Actually, I just thought of two items I forgot to mention while on the announcements. We are looking for presenters. So if anybody has any topics that you're passionate about that you'd like to speak on, definitely get with us. And or if there's any topics that you'd like to see, that's so just yeah, I forgot to mention that earlier. So tonight's topic. So no, it's all good. Uh, Burnout and taking control, taking control of that, getting out of that cycle. It's a topic very dear to my heart. I hope when I did my practice run, I did it at 25 to 38 minutes. So it all depends on the. Feel free to ask questions. So let's just go ahead and dive on in here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Daniel Pelfrey. I've been in the IT business now. Oh goodness, almost 35 years now. I've been playing with computers. Goodness, for yeah, yeah. From the time that the 6502 was king to present. I've been in networking. I am a HPC network engineer at Oak Ridge National Lab, and yeah, I've been around for a while. Networking, data centers. It's very passionate about science, chemistry, especially space stuff. It's always been one of my favorite things. But little disclaimer: I am not professional help. I'm just a guy on the internet, right? So there's lots of great resources out there. The goal of this presentation is to share some of my mistakes. Hopefully that you don't have to repeat them. Learn from them. Basically, how to identify that you're experiencing burnout, how to basically and develop some tools to either recover or to also prevent. Right? I mean, the preventions is worth pounds of cure. And I'm going to go into all kinds of. I'm going to try to put more on that side than I am on the theory and some of the stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, you know, I've experienced burnout numerous times throughout my life. Never really knew what was going on. I was just tired. I just was burning both ends of the candle. And shock. Spoiler alert, that catches up with you. No matter how much coffee and because I mean, burnout is it's burnout and stress, right? I mean, yeah, it's defined, burnout's defined as exhaustion, feeling swamped, but it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be mental fatigue, and just not enough recharge time. But I mean, stress by itself isn't bad, right? I mean, it would be boring if there wasn't any excitement. I mean, I sometimes think that being in IT is stressful, and it kind of is to an extent, but I also love what I do. I love the outcome. I love the people. I love the mission. I wouldn't want to give that up, right? So stress is very much, I like to think of it like water. You don't get enough water, you're going to be thirsty. You're going to get dehydrated. You get too much water, either A, you're drowning, or B, you're pushing out your electrolytes, right? So it's all about that balance act. It really is. So, and burnout and stress, I mean, they're similar. I mean, stress can cause burnout, but they're not quite the same. So, what does burnout feel like? My favorite is running on fumes, low battery, low motivation. Emotionally, you don't care about those things as much. Things that used to spark joy is kind of, so, or it's and it can be confused with depression, right? So not treating burnout can lead to depression, and you can reduce burnout with rest. Depression is not something, it's much harder to treat and recover from. You're not going to take the weekend off and solve depression, but if taking a weekend off, you might come back recharged. So how we feel is, I think it's very subjective, right? We're not, I like to think of it almost as the check engine light. You don't really, unless you're really careful, unless you're really super mindful, you don't know that there may not be a problem. And I was thinking here would be a great place to insert the this is fine meme, right, with the dumpster fire. But we don't really have, I mean, you might be feeling great, or you think you're feeling great, but you're just running on vapors, right? You may feel with that, when I say subjective, it all depends on how you feel that day. But it's a function of over time. And one of the things that I would like to encourage during this is, how do you get a good feedback loop? And there's a lot of different technologies. There's a lot of things. I mean, wearable technology, it's amazing. I mean, it can track how you sleep, it can track your exercise, but just be aware some of these things, they're not exactly medical grade devices. You may get some false information. So take that with a grain of salt, trust but verify. One of the things I found with my watch is when I first got it, it was saying that I didn't realize that because I was using it to track my heart rate. It said my heart rate was down in the low 40s. It's like, what the crap, right? Fastest way to get a panic attack, right? Turned out it was just a little bit, wasn't making good contact. And had a little bit of shave a little spot there. And suddenly I'm back to my normal resting 50. So I was expecting that, not the 40. It's kind of scary. So, anyways, next thing. The causes of burnout, right? I mean, and a lot of these things, it's there are a lot of these are basically lead to what's called a negative feedback loop, where you just get in this perpetual cycle of lack of sleep, certain personality traits. We wouldn't know anything about this. Any perfectionists in the room? um, Taking on too much without asking for help, responsibilities that are way too demanding. And this doesn't have to be necessarily at work. It could be at home. It could be at school. It could be a combination of things, right? I affectionately call that one the death by a thousand cuts. You can deal with that. I can deal with that, and that. But if I deal with all of them at once, forget it, right? It's just going to be overwhelming. If you lack supportive or meaningful relationships, friendships can go a long way. And just to have someone to talk to. What have you gone through? How did you get out of this, right? Um, it can also be feeling unrewarded or unappreciated, right? I mean, feeling out of control at work or home. I mean, it could also be an unmanageable workload. So they're just throwing more and more stuff at you. It could be unfair treatment at work. It could be unclear responsibilities at work. They may be saying, well, you just do everything, but is that really in my scope or my expertise? There's deadline pressures, and then and it all boils down to too much and not enough recovery time. So those are some of the high level causes, but we're going to do a very deep dive into these topics. So types of burnout. So you have basically you have overload, under challenging, neglect, and habitual. Overload, as it implies, basically you work harder and harder. You basically channel that inner voice of you have to do this, right? You're driven. It could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be you're the sole breadwinner of your family. It could be this is an important project. I mean, it's a lot of variables there. On the flip side, you could be under challenged. You could be bored. You could feel unappreciated. You could be in a dead end. That can also induce burnout, right? So you don't necessarily you may feel like I have no growth here. There's nothing for me unless you can challenge yourself to get out of that. These and we're going to talk very much details about these. Neglect. I think it's something that we can all. I mean, all of us can relate to various ones, but when I think of neglect, it's the biggest item that comes to mind is that it's imposter syndrome. Oh God, what did I just get myself into? I am so far in over my head. You lose confidence in you know you can do it, but then you're second guessing yourself. And it's like, oh crap, what do they think? Right. And when you go down that rabbit hole, your mind will just race 1,000 miles per hour and you're thinking more about, what, we're thinking about the negative aspect than what you actually can do. So we tend to sell ourselves short, and these types of things can build. Habitual, basically, you're chronic, right? And when you have chronic burnout, that's what can lead to depression, and it can lead to a ton of other health issues. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next couple slides. So 12 stages of burnout. And this when I first read this many years ago, I kind of was like, oh crap, this is like, okay, this led to this, led to this. And I'm like, okay, I could see. So the urgent need to prove yourself, right? It's all about being a perfectionist or fear of not meeting needs, right? You might think, oh God, I'm going to get laid off, or you've got something driving you. Everything's a fire drill. Um, so what do? You'll work harder. You're full throttle 100% of the time. You want to get everything done as soon as possible. What does that lead to? Neglecting your needs. You're going to cut corners, right? So when you cut these corners, when you neglect your needs, you're going to cut out, first thing that goes, you're going to cut out sleep. You're going to cut out your exercise. You're going to cut out you may not have as much time with your friends. All of these adds to that negative feedback loop and will basically make this problem worse. So when you start, once you start cutting these corners, it will basically lead to interpersonal conflicts, right? So without sleeping, you can make mistakes, number one, but you're also going to do and say things that you wouldn't normally do. You might get your words jumbled up. You're going to make someone mad. You might and make someone angry, right? So relationships will start suffering because of this, right? So, which leads to the next point. You're going to revise your values. This paycheck, this thing is the most important thing. I will prioritize this over my family, my friends, over, it's when you start shifting those goalposts of what's important to you, that will lead to other things, right? So you're basically going to start hitting a denial of, you're starting to feel impatient. You might be angry at other people. You're going to struggle to see why. And then that leads to the next half of this vicious cycle. You're going to start withdrawing from people even more so, right? Because you're going to be afraid of criticism. You're going to be afraid of any really good feedback on, and you're also going to feel like being around other people is an emotional burden, right? So that's which leads to behavioral changes, right? Once you start withdrawing more from people, you're basically going to start avoiding responsibilities. Things aren't going to matter as much. You're going to feel a lot more apathy. Does any of this ring home for anybody? It's different parts, right? So and it's, you don't realize it until it just it, it you don't know, you don't always know that it's coming, but when it hits you, oh my God, you feel like you've just been hit by a truck, right? And you don't realize it, right? So you start at that point, you start feeling depersonalized, right? You lost your identity. It's like, do you live to work? Do you forget what you enjoyed? I mean, what are if you're not making time to go and do the things that you normally used to do, that's going to also feed into this perpetual negative feedback loop of, you're going to feel empty. You're going to feel exhausted. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to have panic attacks. And the last two stages is basically despair, right? You're not going to be happy with yourself. You're going to potentially get depressed. And then you're going to reach the stage of total burnout. So, yeah. So treatment. Treatment is so treatments, sleep is the most important thing. You want to make sure that you're not having to stay dependent on sleep aids. You don't want to take alcohol or any type of over-the-counter sleep aids, because especially if they're addictive or habit forming, right? Because if you need those to go to sleep, you may not have a good sleep without those. And taking those over a long period of time, it can cause other health issues. So, talk, if you have a good relationship and trust your supervisor, talk with them. Be honest, right? Hey, I'm burnout. What can you do to help me here? What can I do to help me refocus, right? But we're going to talk a little more about age. The most important thing is really, I should not have jumped to treatment. I guess I should have, but identifying that you have a problem, right? That's like the number one thing. But try to find things that are relaxing, that you enjoy. I mean, it could be something as simple as walking around the neighborhood, or especially going for anything where you have greenery, right? Find you a greenway, or go to a local park and walk laps. I mean, anything that you can do to just, relax, refocus, finding support in family and friends. That's really important. Be able to share with them that you're struggling, right? That you're just not feeling recharged, because if you let that go for too long, you're going to end up in that cycle to where it's basically going to get worse and worse and worse until you reach the total burnout point. So, and of course, there's also finding professional support. That's a very, there's lots of great sites. There's therapy. There's all kinds of, I mean, some workplaces even have in-house people who specialize in that type of thing to help people. So, untreated burnout. If you cut out your exercise, you cut out your sleep, first thing you're going to start doing, you're going to start putting on the pounds. And when you start putting on that more weight, you're going to have other problems. So this is almost another type of negative feedback loop where you're going to have headaches. You're going to end up with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, things that you happen. I mean, sometimes that can happen without exercise. I mean, the genetics, but if you're more likely to have those types of problems if you don't get good exercise or good sleep. High blood pressure. If you have a lot of high blood pressure, you're probably going to be prone to having strokes. If you're upset a lot, you may have stomach and digestive issues. A big thing is breathing issues. You might have anxiety, panic attacks. Those can be those can vary in severity depending on the person. And you may not realize, oh crap, what's happening to me? You think you're dying with those types of things. So it's those types of things is it's best to avoid them or identify them as early as possible before they get too severe. But being tired can also lead to mistakes. You could be driving a car. You could fall and hurt yourself. I mean, you could injure someone else. So, I call it, if someone's on autopilot, right? You're so tired that you're just doing things without even thinking about what you're doing, right? So those can lead to some very negatively impacting things that could happen to you. So, burnout prevention, um, eating healthy, right? I mean, we're a product of, eating. If you eat a lot of fast food or anything that is loaded full of salt or that you're not getting the right nutrients, like a lot of food, probably not, especially if you're talking about processed stuff, it may not have all the potassium that you need. You may not be getting all the magnesium you need, all the other nutrients, right? So eating healthy, it's very important. I mean, exercise, especially as we get older. If you cut out exercise, because that's probably one of the first things you're going to cut out when you're pressed for time, and then there's sleep, right? Is when you start cutting out your exercise, you're going to lose your energy. You're going to put on weight. You're going to have more aches and it's going to exacerbate if you have hip like knees or ankle problems. It's going to make it worse if you have those extra pounds. That's adding on to that. Um, Setting priorities and boundaries, right? That's you've really got to focus on what's important. Paycheck, you can find. I mean, that's sad to say, but there's more important things than work, right? So, I mean, that's you have to shift things and you have to find balance. So, and we're going to go a little more into that here, especially on some both what I call the skills and strategies section. So, but also going out and doing things with friends, also going out or peers, or just interacting with people. That doesn't, I mean, it could be family, it could be friends, but also seeking outside help with managing stress. So recovery, I mean, the first thing like everything, anytime you have a problem, you have to recognize that there is a problem and that it needs fixed. You have to make those changes and you have to reflect on those mistakes. What did I do wrong here? At what point did I go down this rabbit hole of this spiral of things getting worse and worse and worse? What could I have done there? And it's it's interesting. I mean, everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? So, I mean, what works for me may be different from other folks, and vice versa. But it's sometimes we will let our emotions or feelings overrule how we perceive things. You may perceive things not quite in the way of reality of what they really are, and you have to step back and say, well, where did I miss? What did I do, and what can I do to help prevent this from reoccurring, right? And then keeping the healthy boundaries, right? So when I say healthy boundaries, like, okay, I'm going to limit myself to, I allow you, sometimes stuff is going to happen. You might work, might need to work a 9 or a 10 hour day, but you set the, hey, I'm not going to do this more than, if I start doing this more than 2 times a week, there's a problem. Or, you have to figure out what is that, identify what it is and what that threshold is. And we're going to talk a little more about that, about the early warning signs and the skills and strategies. But the most important thing is prioritizing your health. That's what you have, right? So it's and going for walks, making sure that you sleep, make sure that you eat, make sure that you're not overindulging, because it's, I mean, there's two different spectrums there. One, you might not feel like eating and you feel like, it's, so you're in that part. Or you could also be on the opposite end of that, where you're just comfort eating all the time. It's like, oh my God, I just realized I ate that whole thing, right? And it's like, now either way, you're going to feel bad. And either way, you're going to have problems. So now for the fun stuff. My personal strategies, like high level, these 4 points, like identify the early warning signs and the frequency, identify skills and strategies that I'm going to try to use daily, and also have a battle plan that when I start hitting the early warning signs, these are going to be my go-to things to get out of this problem. So one of the things that I look at as an early warning sign is if I start cutting sleep. If I say, hey, if I'm getting, I mean, sometimes something's going to wake you up in the middle of the night. You don't want to hyper focus, but say, hey, I need at least 7.5 to 8.5 8 hours of sleep. But if I start seeing less than 8 hours of sleep twice a week, might be a problem, right? So, but you also want to look at how many nights a week do you get. You want to have at least 5 or 6, but if you start, you want to figure out what that threshold is. And I spoke on this earlier, but using sleep aids, right? You don't want to use like Benadryl or Meclizine or anything that could be anything that could be over the counter, that can be used for sinuses, that can also help you sleep. That can cause other types of problems. I mean, the dependency is just the tip of the iceberg, but taking that stuff long term can have other types of side effects that they don't normally cover, right? A lot of that stuff is meant for short term use, not for 3 months, 6 months. If you start taking that for years on end, you can end up having some really strange health issues that they're probably not going to find until they do a very strong deep dive. And this is speaking from friends and family of seeing that firsthand. So yeah, um, try to. I mean, so me personally, I'm not much of a social person. I may only go out to, may only do things with family and friends, sometimes once or twice a week. But if I say that hey, I'm only doing half of that, I'm going to identify, hey, that's a problem, right? So I need to do. I'm also going to look at thresholds like exercise. I try to work out 5, 6 days a week. Look and track how much time that I'm getting, how much time and intensity. I get it. I can't, like today, I'm only at 6,000 steps. That's low for me. I normally do 15 to 20,000, but it's okay. I'm here doing something that I enjoy. So it's okay. Now, if I did that on a repeated basis, that could be an early warning indicator that I need to throttle back, that I need to make time to go back in. Because if I don't do that, I recognize that I am going to be in trouble. Um, with that being said, if I catch myself craving food, let's say if I will occasionally have something once every couple of weeks, right? But if I find myself doing it at least twice a week or greater, there's a problem. It's an early warning indicator that that something's going on. Um, if you find yourself skipping meals or skipping breaks, those are things that also early warning signs, right? So again, these are, and everybody's going to have different things, but think about what you do on a regular basis. Think about what your normal baseline is, and you need to think about because everybody's going to have different signs and different thresholds, but you figure out what those are, and you stick to them. And like I said, we're going to talk about these strategies, and the strategies again are going to vary from person to person. But some of these, when I discovered them, it's like, oh, and when they were talking about the science behind them, it kind of blew my mind. Um, skipping breaks, catching myself in autopilot mode. If I find myself in the habit of, and I get it, some things you're going to do just out of repetition, but if you do things that could potentially, that you normally wouldn't do, like, hey, I'm driving down, like you don't want to make the mistake of, okay, am I at work or am I at home, right? It's like, you don't want to do that. Some other indicators for just me personally, if I find myself being easily irritated or easily annoyed, right, it's like I need to be mindful of that something's going on. uh, or big indicators, if I drink too many of these, that's also going to cause the sleep problem and also cause ramp up the anxiety problem. So occasionally, yeah, it's fine. I can have more than two cups of coffee a day. But if I start drinking multiples, that's also an early warning sign. Um, but the other thing is finding out, like, it might be taking a day off from work or going and doing something, right? So those are the early warning signs. Now, what I want to talk about for the identifying skills and strategies, right? These are things that you're going to basically, it's almost like a daily checklist, right? I'm going to make sure that I get 8 hours of sleep. If I find out that I'm not, I'm going to jot that down and see how many of these little marks do I have, right? Technology is great for that. You could say, hey, didn't sleep well, and sometimes it's actually pretty good about detecting how well you did sleep, which is kind of crazy unless your spouse tosses and turns, then you're going to get some false information. But um, little things that I do, right? I try to keep a habit. I like to read it. I like to read every day, even if it's just for 15 to 30 minutes. I like to go and read something. I try to cut out screen time before bed so that I don't have, unfocused, don't doom scroll, don't um, find, so just relax before bed, right? Don't get myself wound up. So I try to do that. Um, Exercising daily, realistically, I like to. I mean, a 5 minute walk it's going to vary from person to person, but for me, it's like once I hit 20 or 30 minutes, it's like, you're right. You feel that's when you can just take that deep breath and you just feel so relaxed. But again, that's me. Everybody else is going to have that different threshold. Um, let's see. Uh, Surprisingly, if you start feeling, like I said, I am more of an introvert. So outside of my circle, don't do a whole lot. But if I also make sure that if I'm getting to that point to where if I'm missing, like, hey, I need to call some friends or call folks, I do that, right? I have my list of go tos, um, of people I talk to. The other thing is, I might start cutting this out and start going over to green tea or herbal tea. I get something to drink, but it helps me relax. But strangely enough, there were two hacks that I learned that just blew me away. And if you're feeling stressed, I was told, it's like, try it. Like, make yourself yawn. Make yourself take a deep yawn, and it's like, okay, wow, it's almost like your body, you're almost sending, like, so the science behind it, it's something to do with the vagus nerve, and it's basically saying, okay, it's almost like you're retelling your brain, okay, it's a reinforcement loop. It's okay to relax, it's okay, you're safe, relax. um, Related to that, certain types of candy that will make you salivate a lot, like lemon drops or something like that, that will also, when you do that, will send that same type of signal of relaxation. Find out what works for you there. Try that breathing technique. Try to yawn, right? Try to make yourself yawn and see if that doesn't if that helps. Um, if you find yourself being irritated and annoyed, try to laugh, smile, see how that makes you feel. Because sometimes you might find that if you see someone, especially first thing in the morning, it's almost contagious, and you'll find that someone, it might brighten their day and just come back around for you as well. So drinking lots of water, making sure to stay hydrated, right? Especially, I don't travel a whole lot, but when I do, man, I get so dehydrated because I don't want to have to, you don't want to have to go to the bathroom on the plane if you don't have to, but, or the same thing when I'm driving, right? It's like, you don't, so you got to be careful, especially when travel, because on top of all that, you dehydrate yourself enough over time. It's like, especially if you're downing this on top of it, it's not a good combination, right? But making sure to take time off 1 or 2 days every month, right? I mean, do something that you like. It could be going to the zoo or the aquarium or to the arboretum. But yeah, it is a so some of the coping skills that I was talking about. These are things that I go to. Um, is out when I cut myself out of the screen time stuff, I try to designate a worry time before, preferably a couple hours before I go to bed. But I will sit down and I'll write my to-do list. Hey, I need to take care of property taxes. I might need to renew my license or renew something, or I need to work on this thing at work. You do that, you let it go. You're not going to be thinking about that at 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you do those types of things as a habit, you're not going to, you're less likely to be woken up. So again, you're going to have a better night's sleep. Um, let's see. Worry time. Making sure to, the other thing is, let's see. Got my notes jumbled up here. Yes. So making, so the other thing, in addition to writing it down, might be journaling. Right, you might want to think about what you enjoy, and think about what you would like to do. Something to, let's say, like like I've got a vacation coming up here in a couple of weeks, right? Having little things over a period of time, and it doesn't have to be a massive vacation. It could be something. Hey, I want to go up to the Smokies, or I want to go see this. I mean, there's tons of things to explore, see, and do. So these are just some of the warning, some of the personal strategies there. So trying to think of oh, okay. Let's see. I went through that fast. Let me go to the next slide here. But so summary here. Burnout. I mean, it's hit me numerous times in my life, different jobs, different points. It's and every time it usually sneaks up. It's not like, and it's when it does, it hits hard, and it's really hard to, once you've gone through it, you would think that sometimes you would learn, but sometimes it's like you end up with more challenges that you had never experienced before. It does, right? So I found that the early warning indicators and some of the preventative measures, those ounces of prevention are worth pounds of cure. So hopefully these things have, you know, hopefully these have been helpful. These some of the think about. I mean, how many people in here? How many have gone through burnout to some degree? Right? That's what I thought. So yeah, it's but hopefully this has been. Yeah, I went through this super fast. I didn't. 'Cause I was thinking 25 minutes when I did my first run. So yeah. So, any questions, thoughts, concerns?
One thing that for me is as you get older, you learn what your triggers are, and just being introspective enough to realize what triggers you. Yeah. For me, one of the things is when the days start getting short. By November, I'll you know, I'll be ready to go to bed at 7 o'clock, and then wake up at 1 in the morning and can't sleep. And for me, it's a seasonal affective disorder thing. And yep. I'll wait till a bright sunny day, how cold it is. I'll just go out on a hike, go out in the woods, go get a shotgun and just go brush on it, whatever it is. And being out in the sun on a bright sunny day,
Yeah.
resets my biological clock, and I will have a sleep problem for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, it's sort of catching up with me again. And
Getting out a couple. That's a good point. Getting out a couple times a week, absolutely.
But it's the bright sun. And
Yeah.
if I go out on a day like today, it'd be good.
Yeah.
For me, it's a cold, bright day.
But when we hit the gloom in January and February, and you don't get any bright sunny days,
Yeah.
I use a UV lamp in my computer room. That helps. It does. That really helps me feel not as
It's more about being self-aware to figure out what your restrictions are.
100%.
It's something that your coping mechanism. If you're in that state, then your coping mechanism is gone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, sure.
Yes, one thing I would like to bring up is that there's a clear difference between like resting and relaxing and still being preoccupied with like content of some form, shape, or manner, right? So I find that a lot of the time, instead of like taking away some time to sit and be by yourself, just doing some form of self-reflection and quiet and that sort of activity, a lot of the time it leads into, oh, I'm going to watch TV or play on my phone or something like that. My mind is still occupied and turning and not being able to take those moments of rest. And I think that leads itself to what you were saying about the phone, right? If you take away your phone towards the end of the bed, you kind of get some of that passive bed and rest time. And I experienced this myself because I started doing sauna a while ago. And I don't know if you know about sauna, it's big and really hot. So you can't have your phone in there because lithium batteries don't mix very well. So I found myself being in the sauna and just by myself and being able to reflect and all that sort of thing. There's a clear difference between that sort of state and then being relaxing and still playing on your phone or playing video games or TV or something like that. So that's what this helped me a lot.
Yeah, so I speed ran 1 through 12 a couple of years ago. We got pulled onto the CDC HPC contract in the middle of COVID. So eating at your desk when you're working, bad. My wife would bring food to the door to my home office, put it down, knock on the door, and walk away. And I just eat breakfast and lunch, dinner. Let's see what else we have. Describe yourself to someone else and do not mention what you do as work and see what you can say about yourself. One of the things I realize is, wait, what do I do for fun? Where are my hobbies? If you are on a vacation or something like that, and you were going, I should check my work email, or something might not work if I'm not there, you're probably already so far into the burnout phase that you are. And my personal favorite trigger. So one of the things that we would do is we would ask each other questions at 10 p.m. at night, get the answer, and then go pretend we weren't working at 10 p.m. at night. But then I realized that during that entire time, I started being triggered by the Teams ding.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, I just told my wife, don't text me right now. I'm hearing the ding in my head.
Yep.
And I lay down at night, I hear the ding in my head. If you get triggered from that kind of the email sound or the Teams ding or something like that,
turn it off.
Not just turn it off, you probably are too deep in.
Yeah.
One of the things I did recently was I enabled the nightly focus mode on my phone. So I set the focus during my normal sleep time, but it adds an hour in front of that where no notifications come through. You're expected to be winding down during that time. So I moved it ahead to actually the time I didn't be disturbed was it, but it has actually done wonders for that aspect of the evening, that quiet time before you lay down to bed. We've grown a lot on social media, which helped a ton. You'd be shocked at how much indirect stress that has.
100%. That's a good point.
But yeah, I think even Androids have focus. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I highly recommend.
Yeah.
Just turn my phone off.
Hey.
Yeah.
Well, so I have AD parents, and the focus mode allows them to call.
Yep.
So like, I won't get texts, I won't get messages from any messaging after anything like that. But if someone really needs,
Yep.
the phone portion still works.
Yeah, I have that on my phone as well. Do not, it's like a do not disturb mode that I can have exceptions in, and I give certain people the ability carte blanche to reach me anytime. Otherwise, it just cuts down the noise, right? I mean, you cut it out because you never know when you're gonna get that spam call. Unfortunately, at 12, at 2 o'clock in the morning, or that random text of the phishing email, right?
So I have been getting random calls with buddy mine's in Europe right now, so they'll be texting me on hour.
Set a screen time restriction for certain apps on, so I can only use a couple hours a day. So if I'm on my lunch break, it's fine, but run out of hours.
The other thing that I did at home, this is because I'm sure other people in this room had the same problem. I'll sit down and start working on a problem and lose track of how long I've been working.
Yep.
So one of the things that I did is I enabled the night mode to trigger at a certain time on all of my machines. So as a visual reminder, I now been here past when I normally should be off. So at that point, when I see that, I get this off and shut it down.
Night mode is where it turns like yellowish, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, if you don't do that, it drops. Oh, you do certain things like towards the latter half of the day, right towards nighttime. There's apps to do it. I think window paint does now, stuff like that. So yeah, night mode is really good.
Well, one of the things that I started doing was that's just the night mode would happen, and I was going off that whole reduce the blue spectrum and that stuff. But I was continuing to work,
Mhm.
and again, I have this tendency to sit down and get into a problem and just lose track of how long I've been sitting. So what I did was I changed my perspective on that particular mode so that now it's a trigger to my brain. You are now past the time when you need to go. So it's time to just get off.
Well, the thing about actually during the workdays, I have a hourglass, so I'll turn it over, and I think it's 45-minute duration timer. But I'll work for the whole 45 minutes, then it's up. It's like, okay, I'll go get water or go to the restroom, do something and move a little bit. I'm saying this thing. I'll go move a little bit, get blood flowing, and then come back, then reset the timer again and work. So that's helped a lot with like one tempo and pacing, right? And then it also allows for if someone hits me up in a message or something like that, I can see that it's not super urgent. I can push it to the right until this focus work time is up. That helps me get a lot more done. So
That's kind of like on the door, maybe.
That's what I was looking for.
I have no idea.
Yes.
I have no idea.
Timer bars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it may use smaller timer bolts with
Yes. Oh, okay, yeah.
But with that breaking out the post, what that technique does is it allows you to tailor those work sessions to your attention. Some people sitting down and working 45 minutes straight is just not what it happens, right? But they can set it on a 20-minute timer, and that is a little more. They're more of a 20 take 5, 20 take 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Versus someone who's I'm much more prone to 45 minutes to just straight solid and then have to take it.
One of my techniques is once I happen to be on call that week, I do not take my work laptop home. It stays on my desk. I don't get.
I want to get to that point. I'm not there yet.
Walk away.
Not